It darkens your day. I thought dying for your country was the worst thing that could happen to you, but now I don't think it is. I think killing for your country can be a lot worse, because that's the memory that haunts. Even if we question whether Senator Kerry would truly rather be dead, the intensity of the emotions he expresses should not be disregarded. Officers must take seriously their responsibility to protect their troops as much as possible from unrecoverable losses, physical and otherwise. At the extreme, these potential losses include the loss of their humanity. Short of that, but still devastating, is the loss of the ability to reconcile their actions in war with the values that used to ground their identity. Such a loss could indeed make survival unbearable, and that is a sacrifice that no one should be asked to make. It is my wish that not one of you in this room, in your career as an officer, should ever have to make the choice between taking an action that damages your soul or suffering physical injury or even death. Nor do I want any of you to have to place your sailors or Marines in greater peril in order to uphold the values of your profession. Yet surely, more than a few of you sitting here now will one day face moments such as these. It is appropriate that you should take advantage of the time you have now in the relative peace of the academy to contemplate how such a test might come to you and how you will resolve it. I hope that this discussion tonight will give you pause and that you will remember how Sergeant Davis's words shattered the complacency and the bravado of the midshipmen in my Code of the Warrior class those years ago. The most important lesson any of us can learn is that there are fates, as Edgar Rice Burroughs put it, 1,000 times worse than death. I would like to close with a quote that I've always found inspiring from the Roman Stoic Seneca. Never will I let concern for my flesh drive me to fear, never to a role that is unworthy of a good person. I will not allow any wound to penetrate through the body to the real me. My body is that part of me that can be injured, but within this fragile dwelling place lives a soul that is free. Thank you.
Well, I'll have questions. If you have any questions for Dr. French, please move to one of the 4 mics here so everyone can hear what your question is.
All right, we're not going anywhere until you guys ask a question.
You have to go to a mic. Sorry.
Midshipman Third Class Geisman. Ma'am, my question is, might we be doing more here at the Academy to help us as midshipmen understand the climate that we need to be promoting? Is the climate here at the Academy beneficial and a good example for us in the climate that we should be promoting as officers later on in our future?
Well, this is where I have to remember that I don't work here anymore. No. I think that there's a lot that goes on here at the Academy that is wonderful preparation, and I'm not just saying that, but I do think if I were to offer a criticism, I think that as you move up in your progression here, as you go through the years here, that there should be even greater, actually, latitude given to you to make mistakes and step outside the box more so that you can learn from that, again, in the relative peace of this environment. When I was here, and I don't know if this is any longer the case, but I used to argue that conduct offenses should count a whole lot less than honor offenses, and that academics should not be the only measure. Yay. Because you have to learn to be flexible, and you can't learn that if you're kept constantly in the box. So if the things you're supposed to be practicing are denied you, then you don't have a chance to grow in that area as a leader. Now, everyone has to learn through stages, so you don't start out being given that freedom. But I think you have to gradually acquire more of it than at least midshipmen were given during my time here. I even argued at one point that firsties should be allowed to live off the yard. That did not go over well, but that was...
Thank you, ma'am.
You just said I'm going to get elected to something. I don't think that's... it's true, though. I did, in fact, argue that at the time. Maybe our only question. Oh, no.
Ma'am, Midshipman Third Class Kistler.
You're popular.
Ma'am, I was wondering if you could offer us some advice for when we get out in the fleet. Supposing we find ourselves in a position such as the colonel you mentioned in Iraq, what is a good way to approach superiors or subordinates when you're concerned with the command climate they are engendering?
Well, my best advice is to think of the suicide note that I read you. I would obviously not have wanted that to be a suicide note. I think that should have been a memo to his commanders while he was still living, and perhaps to their bosses, and perhaps, because at that point he was literally willing to die for how strongly he felt. So he should also, I think, have been willing to take whatever career consequences, and clearly he was. He didn't care about career. For him, he didn't have hope, I think, at that point that it would have changed anything. But I believe it might have. That strongly worded note, if that had genuinely found its way into the hands of his commanders while he was still alive, I think it would have had an effect. And if he felt that passionately, I believe he should have done that. I was talking a lot in my speech about how if you are afraid of death, you're going to make the wrong decisions. That if you think that's the worst thing that can happen to you, you're going to trade off your soul for your life. But I also think that if your career is the most important thing to you, you're going to make poor decisions. And I think that you have to, if you feel that strongly, you are protecting the people subordinate to you. You have to take a stand. And if that costs you your career and you are pushed out for that, so be it. Though the heavens fall, you have to take a stand. And you have to remind yourself that even though you would rather be there with your troops and continue to serve with them, you have served them by drawing attention to that kind of level of corruption. So I would say, make sure it's a real case, that it's not just something that bugs you, or that they're not doing quite right. But if it matters, then take a stand and make a point of it and dare the consequences.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Saved by study hours. One more
Maybe
question.
one more.
Ma'am, Midshipman Third Class Byrne. I recently learned about some photographs that just surfaced of members of the Army in Afghanistan posing with dead Afghanis. And I was wondering how you thought this could maybe cause members of the American public and even members of like the military or military academies to lose faith in the military in general?
Well, I think that the memory that comes back to me is when the Abu Ghraib pictures first surfaced. I was, of course, teaching here. And I was also at that time, along with Captain Rubel and some others, delivering some seminars to chaplains at various military bases, Navy and Marine Corps bases all around the world, actually. And whenever the subject of the photographs at that time came up, I would ask my MIDs, or we would ask the chaplains, how do you feel about that? And just like we heard in Senator Kerry's comments about his experience in Vietnam, the word they chose was shame. They felt shame. Even though they, of course, had nothing to do with it directly, it was their organization, it was their military, and they felt the shame of that. So I would be disingenuous if I said it isn't going to affect people. It does. But I think that we can't let these kinds of examples make us forget all the people who are doing the right thing at risk to their lives over and over again. So the people who do the wrong thing stand out because, goodness knows, the media loves a negative story more than a positive one. But if we remind ourselves of the people who are doing the right thing, and we try to understand what led the people who are doing something wrong to get to that point, and we try to address those problems, then we stop feeling helpless. You don't any longer feel like this is just out of control, and you get depressed and cynical and there's no hope. If you say, no, this is something we can address. Clearly, a lot of people are getting it right and doing it right, so it is possible. So let's look at what went wrong here. There's something specific that went wrong that led them to think that was okay, that they could dehumanize the enemy like that and be disrespectful in a way that violates the code. And I think that the primary focus of caring about a code and owning it and having it be yours and having it not be contingent on who your enemy is and how they're behaving is something that should give members of the military very justifiable pride. That it's not about who we're fighting and what they do, it's that we don't do this. It doesn't matter what other people do. We don't do this. We don't disrespect dead bodies. So I think that enough can be done to find the good and figure out what went wrong and address it to restore our faith. But it will take some doing. There will be a hit that it will be taken.